Okay, what I'm doing now is starting the threads on the end of the axle. We've got it shaved down to where it'll accommodate the die that we're using, and I end up moving the piece out a little ways and moving the tool post over to where I can get this nice little die handle in here, and then pinned it between the stock and the tailstock of the lathe. And what I'm going to do is just put the piece in the chuck and start to turn it a little bit, and as I do, I'm going to turn this knob on the tailstock so it'll keep pinching the die holder into the material and help cut the threads.
A couple other things we did off camera. One, we turned another $5,000 off the shoulder we made just so the die won't thread extremely tight, so that the threads aren't too tall. Also, we turned a little chamfer, little angled shoulder on the end of the rod we're using, just to give the die a real nice fighting chance to get started.
Alright, we started it in the lathe, started the threads, but it's just it'd take too long to do the whole thing like that. So all I'm going to do is I took it out of the lathe, put it in the vise, and now I'm just going to tap it by hand. It's going to go a lot quicker. And the only reason we really had it in the lathe is so we could get the threads started going on straight, so when we put the nut on, it won't be cocked up next to the axle plate and just look like shit. So I'm just going to spin it by hand, and usually on a bigger size die like this, you want to take, do a full revolution and then back it off, maybe a half revolution or so, just so you can clear your teeth on your die. If you don't do that, it'll get tougher and tougher and tougher, and you can fuck up the die, and all kinds of bad stuff can happen. So this is a safe way to do it, and makes your tools last a lot longer, which is nice. Okay, I've got the threads cut all the way on the axle, as you can see. They look nice, and the nut goes on real easy. If I can get it started here. There we go. Nut spins on really easy. Goes all the way back, but if you can look right here, you can see that there's a little bit of a shoulder that's still left that didn't get hit with the die. So what I'm going to have to do is take a parting tool on the lathe, which is just a little bit that's about 1/8 of an inch wide, that I'll dig right into that shoulder with, which will allow me to screw this nut all the way on so that it bottoms out on the large diameter of the axle, and we can tighten the axle nice and tight once it's on the bike. And alright, I've got the thread reliefs cut on the axle here. As you can see, it just put a nice little channel down right behind the threads, which will allow me to screw the nut on, and it'll bottom out right up against the biggest diameter of the axle, and that way we won't have to worry about the nuts sliding off. We can just cinch them right down and have no problem. And the nuts that I'm actually going to use in this axle aren't this kind of nut. They're a special kind. I've got one with me right here, and as you can see, right under the top of my index finger on that side is not perfectly round. It's actually flat in part of the threading inside the nut, and that'll allow you to actually cinch the nut down, and since it doesn't go freely onto the threads, it'll pretty much lock in place and won't come off, and make it a lot safer. Okay, I took some little bit of stock, a little bit of 3/4 OD stock, and drilled it out to a 17 millimeter, and then I pressed that, as you can see, into my my adjuster collar, and did that to both collars. And when I was off camera, I also threaded both ends of the axle, and on this end I put the permanent locking nut, as you can see on. Okay, the axle's pretty much done now. We've got both ends threaded. As you can see, well, it's the same on both sides. Both ends are threaded. As you can see here, I made some little bushings to go inside of our axle adjuster collars, so they'll fit real nice and snug over the axle, and real nice and snug into the actual collar itself. And as you can see, the axle fits nice and solid into the axle plates. I didn't show you this step, but we had done this before. Made these reducer bushings so that this axle could fit into a 1-inch axle plate, and now the axle fits really nice into those reducers and fits up nice, tight, and snug, and with not a lot of play. And as you can see from this side, we've already got the permanent nut snugged on. And I'll probably end up turning off this extra thread off the end just to get a real nice clean look and to have as little bit of the threads exposed as possible. But other than that, it's ready to go.